Ultimates are the most powerful thing that exists in Overwatch, and you are using them wrong. Getting maximum value out of every single one can completely hard carry games, and this is one of the big reasons why you might not be able to climb. So we're going to break down 6 ultimates that you use incorrectly and give you targeted tips to start to get value out of each and every one of them. But do me a huge solid and smash that like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Check out my stream in the description down below, and let's get into it. Now, the first ultimate that a lot of players just don't know how to use properly is Primal Rage. Well, this ultimate seems fairly easy. You jump in, you pop Primal Rage, and you're an unkillable monster that just pushes people around. The carry potential on this ultimate is some of the highest if you use it properly, and the floor is pretty low. You distract the enemy for a little bit of the time, and you might even die. So how do you make sure that every Primal Rage actually guarantees you a fight win? The first thing that you need to do is make sure that you're going in with your proper engagement even outside of the Primal Rage. This means finding an isolated target, applying pressure to that target, either diving in or cutting that target off. Let's say it's an Ana or another support. You're cutting them off from the rest of their team. You're utilizing your bubble to do so and bait out as many resources as possible. And then Primal Rage is like the icing on the cake to either finish them off and kill them by primaling them into a corner, or using it to effectively go on someone else and as a way to get multiple picks by yourself, because you can go all in positionally and not be as afraid of getting shut down. This also gives you ample time to bait out a lot of cooldowns and then not just Primal Rage and get slept or something like that. Now, it's also super important that you're going in with Primal Rage as your team is ready to engage as well. While you are very, very strong in your Primal Rage and hard to kill, you're not invincible. And the easiest way for you to die is for everyone on the enemy team to focus you, and that costs a lot more when you have a team that is with you going in and actually doing damage to the enemies that are all distracted or helping you engage on the enemy team. This means making sure that you're in a 5v5, engaging when your team is all alive, and making sure not to pop Primal Rage when you're down a ton of numbers is going to increase its success by a huge margin. Last but certainly not least, you need to practice your Primal Rage mechanics. This is very, very hard to do. It's not an easy ultimate. It has some of the highest skill ceiling, I think, out of any ultimate in the game. So what I would suggest is go into a training room, get unlimited Primal Rage, and just practice hitting around bots. It's going to be really, really great to practice juggling them, or the art of multi-hitting someone mid-air, and this is going to allow you to be able to get solo kills with Primal Rage. And the more you can do with your default executes and your Primal Rages, the more fights you're going to carry. Now, the next ultimate that we got to talk about that you're using wrong is Kitsune Rush. Now, this seems like a pretty simple one as well. You just pop Rush and you go in and your team wins the fight, right? Super simple. But after VOD reviewing, I don't even know at this point, like 50 Kirikos, I see every single Kiriko make this mistake over and over again, and it's rushing incredibly inefficiently. They pop Rush when multiple players are dead, which is something that you should almost never do. The idea is that the value of Rush stacks the more people get to use its effect. So ulting a Rush early as the fight starts in a 5v5 is so much better than ulting later on in even a 2v2, or even worse, a situation where you're down a ton of people and you pop Rush anyways. Oftentimes, because of the momentum Rush brings, you can throw Rush out as the start of a fight, allowing you and your team to start trading favorably with abilities at a much more efficient rate than the enemy team. And assuming that the enemy are too far forward and committed to the fight at this point to back out of the rush, you are probably going to win the fight if you don't just get wiped within the first second or two at the start of a rush. So you want to do this sooner rather than later and give your teammates time to feed before you pop it. Now, in addition to that, there's ways to use Kitsune Rush a little bit aggressively to secure kills, and it will win you the team fight regardless. So let's say that there's two of your teammates fighting two enemies on the high ground. If you teleport up there, pop Rush, and y'all get to kill those people very quickly, then it's worth 2 kills. It doesn't matter that the rest of your team didn't get the effect, because you actually just traded it for 2 guaranteed kills, and your teammates got to live because they had a much easier time securing those kills faster and had more abilities to keep them alive. So there's tempo ways to use Kitsune Rush as well. Now, the last thing that you need to do, and this is probably the most important thing, and it's tracking ultimates that can actually shut down Rush. There's several ultimates that if you pop a Rush, it can be used directly to stop the Rush's value. Let's take Shatter, for example. This is a really big one, where if the enemy Rein has a Shatter and you pop Rush right in front of the Rein, he's going to Shatter as a counter to the Rush. And there's ways you could play around this with Suzu, or you can also track and apply pressure to that Rein, make sure that that Rein uses Shatter, or put him in an awkward position where you're communicating with your team and the Rein is low or has no shield health or whatever the case may be, so that the Shatter is a lot harder for him to execute. Because if you just pop Rush when you know the Rein has a Shatter and it gets shut down, then you're allowing your super powerful teamfight winning ultimate to get shut down by the enemies, and you're losing the fight because of it. So definitely a very important thing to play around. Now, the next ultimate that we got to talk about in this video is undoubtedly Bob. Ashe's Bob specifically is just so freaking strong in Overwatch 2. Like, this thing can just completely farm kills. You could put your opponents in such a bad situation, and there's not a lot of shield health or ways to counteract it, so Bob can get a ton of value. But a lot of people are using Bob and it's doing absolutely nothing. So how do you make sure that your Bob is a Bob that carries and not a Bob that just fucking sits there and does nothing? Ultimately, there's two things that you need to do with Bob. The first thing is create space, which means that a Bob should be far in the open, having clear lines of sight to the enemy team. You don't want to put it behind cover. You don't want to put it around the corner. You want to put it in a space where no matter where the enemy move, they're still going to be within line of sight of Bob, which forces them to either deal with Bob or back away because he is claiming said space. Think of it like a Winston. Where would a Winston jump in? Where would your tank push forward into? These are the positions that you typically want Bob to be. He's trying to claim that space. But even more importantly than that, you want a crossfire with Bob and yourself. So the idea is you put it far back into the enemy team where Bob is not only claiming space, but he's putting the enemy team within a rock and a hard place, aka Bob and you as Ashe. This means that they basically don't really have anywhere they can go, and everywhere they go, they are taking fire. It doesn't allow them to dip behind any cover because you and Bob have all of that in your line of sight, and most of the time, if you combine your dynamite, your fire, Bob's fire, the enemy team can't focus at all, they're just all gonna die. And none of them can pop any ultimates or abilities because the chances are they're just gonna die before those go off. But of course, the one thing that can really shut down a Bob is specifically certain abilities like sleep darts. So if you can track these abilities and look for opportunities to either get instantaneous value out of Bob, so the Bob hits up someone, you can get an instant kill with them, or you can create enough pressure with Bob that Bob and your fire together kills people or creates a team fight win, even if it does get slept right away, or you can wait for that sleep dart to come out before you throw out Bob, and a number of different abilities that can shut down Bob, including ultimates. Now, the next ultimate that we got to talk about is Doomfist ult. This might be one of the worst ults in the game, but you're still using it wrong because Doomfist ultimate is not really great at securing kills. And yeah, I've been doing Doomfist only to GM on stream, and I think I've gotten like maybe 2 Doom ult kills the entire time. Like, you just don't kill a lot of people with this goddamn ult because it just doesn't do any damage. But what Doomfist ult is for is to set up what I would call the perfect execute or the all-in execute. And basically, this is how you do it. You get a charge punch. This is the most important thing to start off any engagement of Doom, but it's super important when you go in for this all-in play. You get a charge punch and you engage very aggressively with the intent to not only do a lot of damage, but bait out cooldowns. So let's say you get that charge punch, you get full health, you get all your cooldowns back, then you go in for a really proactive play that, let's say you punch like 3 people and they all get low, and you bait out a nade, you bait out a Suzu, you bait out a coach gun, or a million different abilities, and now you pop your ultimate, you get your cooldowns back, you get a slam back, which will do a little bit of damage, and you get another charge punch, which allows you to go in and potentially clean up all of those kills after they don't have utility. This is like the god tier execute, but it requires you to make sure that you're not using your ult just to get away from a fight or just to start a fight off or whatever the case may be. The start of the fight has to be that charge punch and that proper engage, because ultimately you're trying to bait out the utility yourself before you ult and use that to re-engage and get that charge punch back and hopefully close the fight out yourself. And if you do all these things properly, that's really where you can be super proactive, make a really, really sick play, and sometimes even team wipe the enemy team and you don't even need that much follow-up in order to do it if you do it properly. So this is how you're going to want to use Doomfist ult. Anything else, I mean, just trying to use it to get a kill or whatever the case may be, you're not getting the most amount of value out of it, and most of the time, you're not going to do anything with it. Now, the next ultimate that we got to talk about in this video is undoubtedly Nano with Ana. Now, Nano's an ultimate that is very powerful, mainly because of its flexibility. You can use it to create momentum in a fight. You can use it to bail out a weakened target and save them as a form of peel that not only will keep them alive, but probably will allow both of y'all to kill the person that dove on top of them. Or you can actually use it to just combo with some other character. You could combo with a tank, like a Ramatra ult, or you can combo with a Genji Blade. Whatever you're trying to combo with, Nano will create exponential impact when combined with some other ultimate. And this is a really, really great thing about Nano, but it also creates a lot of problems because as Ana, you have to make a ton of different decisions, right? Sometimes you think that a Nano will be a really great defensive one, and it doesn't matter, the fight's already lost and you just waste it. And then you have a combo waiting there that you should have just waited for and used to guarantee win the fight. Or maybe you could have nanoed a tank aggressively in, maybe to close out a fight, but the fight was already won, and then the next fight that you want to win, you don't have that combo lined up. So this is the questions that you have to ask yourself. Do we have a combo that has a high chance of winning a team fight or getting us a huge amount of value? And how important is it for us to win this team fight, or can we actually wait for the next team fight? So like, if there are clear signs that this ultimate will actually win you the team fight, then sure, but if you're only gonna have one chance to win a team fight if this fight goes wrong, and there's no guarantee that your Nano will win the fight in the moment, oftentimes it's better to play more passively and play for the guarantee ultimate combo later on, because if you waste it now and you lose, then you're in a situation where you don't have that combo going into last fight. And that's the risk and reward on Nano. Oftentimes it's up to you to make that call because Nano can always be used flexibly, but the goal is to make sure that you are winning the most amount of team fights as possible. And every single time that you use Nano and it doesn't result in a one team fight, you have to reevaluate what that cost was. And was there enough? Was your team ahead enough? Did the Nano do enough to justify its use? And if you do that each and every time you use Nano, you're gonna have much better Nanos over the course of all your games. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Hanzo's Dragon Strike, an ultimate that I think a lot of people think is terrible, but I personally think that they're just not using it very well. There are a lot of uses for Hanzo Dragon Strike, and I think the easiest one is just a combo, right? You're comboing with grab, you're comboing with the Orisa ult. It doesn't really matter what it is, but you're comboing to get that guaranteed kill or those guaranteed kills. Now, this is a fairly easy one, but let's talk about some other ways to use Dragon Strike, because you charge this up so fast, you should find other ways to use it. And the other way is just to get a solo kill. And this can be really, really great if you use your Sonic Arrow to find someone that doesn't have mobility through a wall, and you literally just place the dragon right on top of them, and they're just gonna die. Like, most of the time when the fight starts, you can just solo pick, kill somebody. And with an ultimate that charges this fast, and with a character that has the chance to follow it up with more potential pickoffs, getting that initial pick is insanely powerful. So never feel bad about just investing it in a solo pick. Another way that's really great to use Dragon Strike is to counter opponents' ults. Remember that Kitsune Rush that we talked about where players like to push in? Well, Hanzo's Dragon Strike is space denial. So if you use it on top of enemy ultimates, whether they used a grab, Gravitic Flux, Kitsune Rush, oftentimes enemies pushing forward to try to close out and use their ultimates are going to get caught up in a defensively used Dragon Strike. And this can be a way to either gain a lot of space and give your teammates time to breathe, or best case scenario, even get kills on enemies that are overextending into their ultimates, and you could turn a fight just like that. Now, last but certainly not least, Hanzo's Dragon Strike can be used in a pinch to create space on cart. Like if the opponents are about to cap an objective and you don't really have anyone that can touch cart that won't instantly die, like a tank, a Dragon Strike can force the enemy off of it, creating that space that you need and buying time for you to try to push out and maybe get a little pick rather than just touching cart and dying. But these are the 6 ultimates that I see players use the worst in Overwatch. But definitely let me know what ults you see players use poor down below. And if you want private coaching to improve like many have, you can check my Patreon. Links will be in the description. Thanks so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time.